Hey guys, so one of the questions that I get a lot is how do you play modern on standards? Which is a great question that obviously could lead us into a whole bunch of different topics like pentatonics and substitutions, which I just did a video on. But I think the most used concept for getting a modern sound on standards is the concept of melodic scales, which is simply just using a group of notes as a motive for the phrases that you play. So when you're using melodic scales, it's going to result in your thinking a lot more intervallically, which can be a really hip way of playing through the changes. When you're thinking intervallically, you're going to think less about specific chord tones and scale options, and so you'll be thinking more about intervallic themes, which is a totally different approach and can also be really great for using tension and release. So first, if you're looking to build technique, there are a bunch of different ways that you can practice melodic scales as technique building exercises. This concept is really amazing for improving your dexterity, and so if you want to get deeper into that, just check out my video on technique building. But today we're going to check out how to use this concept through standards. So essentially today we're going to dive into using melodic scales through full sets of chord changes. This is something that I'm starting to work on more and more with the more advanced students in my text lesson studio. And just so you all know, that studio is currently open for just a short time. We've been at capacity for several months now, and so I'm not sure the next time the studio is going to open up again, but definitely make sure to check that out. So it's a really cool membership program where I work with you through text and email, and I give you monthly assignments and weekly practice plans so you can really have your practicing be organized and focused and make sure that you're getting the most out of your practicing. We've been getting a lot of really awesome feedback so far from the studio members, which has been really great to see. And so just make sure to check it out before it's too late, especially because you can always cancel your membership at any time, no questions asked. So definitely worth just giving it a try and seeing if it's a good fit for you. All right, so let's jump into this, and first let's just talk about what playing modern means. So typically people think of, swing and bebop language in jazz as being more traditional or a more traditional approach. And then the more modern approach would have started in the 60s when some jazz musicians started to think more intervallically in their improvisation and started thinking about more extended techniques. And thinking intervallically can be approached in many ways, but I think the best way to get this sound is to use the concept of melodic scales. So we talked about this a bit before in my video on building technique, but essentially a melodic scale is just a group of notes, and you can use a group of notes as a vehicle to go inside and outside of the harmony, or just as a way of sounding more intervallic in your approach. So for example, we could construct a line using 3 different melodic scales, moving them around to different places and even changing the direction so they go up and down. That would sound like this. So then when you use cells in a standard, you don't necessarily have to be that deliberate with the cells that you're using, although it is great to practice that way. One thing that can be really effective is if you can get the hang of being able to play melodic cell streams. That's when you just play one cell after another. So of course, one element of being able to play melodic cell streams is just having the technique and getting the technique down. But then beyond that, you need to be able to, think in this way of playing one cell after another. So we all know jazz is a language, and to be able to improvise in that language, you really need to learn the language. And one of the best ways to do that is to learn this content from the masters, of course. But that can be really hard at first, especially when you're not familiar with this technique yet. So I'd say to start out here, it's great to just mess around with playing through these cells really slowly and even writing out different ways that you can use these cells on a progression or a full standard. So when you're writing out these cells, you can experiment with different approaches. You can use a consistent cell that goes inside and outside of the harmony. You can do the melodic cell streams where you're playing one cell after another. There's no right or wrong, just try out some different ideas, mix up non-diatonic cells and diatonic cells, and really just have fun with it and see what sounds right for you. And so to help you get a hang of this idea, I'll show you one of the etudes that I made for this latest PDF package of melodic cell etudes. So this PDF package has has 20 different melodic cell etudes written on 20 different standards, and so a really large percentage of the lines in each etude are melodic cell driven. So let's check out one of the etudes in this PDF package so we can look at it as a reference, and hopefully it will help you get the hang of this sort of thing. And if you want, of course, you can get the whole download so you can play through all of these and hopefully really start to be able to incorporate this sound into your playing over standards. So let's check out the etude in this PDF that's just on rhythm changes. I'll play it down first and you can watch it as it goes by, and then we'll talk about it after. So practically every single note here is part of a 4-note cell, but let's just check out a few of the cells so you can get an idea of how to use the concept. So in bar 3, what you'll see is a cell on D minor 7 that's constructed with the 3rd, the 5th, the 6th, and the root of B flat major 7. So the first thing to note here is that when you have a 3 minor chord like D minor 7 in the key of B flat, it's totally cool to treat that chord scale as Phrygian, which is just a fancy way of saying you can treat that 3 minor chord like it's 1 major if you want. So that's what we do here. And again, remember, when you're thinking more intervallically, you have to be aware of the changes, but we're not going to think about being exact with how we outline them. So that explains what happens next when we do that same intervallic shape and move it into A major and then B major after that. Now, as we can see, these cells clash with the chords they're being played on, but there's still a melodic sense of continuity resulting from using the same melodic cell. So we can see that in the very next bar when we play a very common non-diatonic cell, which is a cell that doesn't fit in a scale. Now, by nature of being non-diatonic, it's not necessarily really harmonious or inside of a sound, but by starting on the sharp 11 of the B flat 7, it will create even more tension and sound a bit more resolved on the next chord when that same cell is used by starting on the 9. Then if we skip forward a few bars, we'll see a cool triadic cell. One thing you can do with cells is create a 4-note cell that repeats a note. So it only has 3 unique notes in the cell, even though it's a 4-note cell. And that's what we see here. In this measure, the cell uses the notes of a B flat major triad, then simply goes down in half steps. That doesn't really relate to the 1-6-2-5 progression happening there, but because there's a consistent cell being used, there's a cohesiveness that makes the tension and release sound really cool and not just like a bunch of random notes. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed checking out this concept with me. Make sure to download the PDF package if you want to have that as a resource. And please make sure to check out that text lesson studio. I would really love to work with you one-on-one to help you accomplish your goals as an improviser and just really make sure that you're developing as efficiently as possible with the amount of practice time that you do have. Alright, thanks for watching. Make sure to click subscribe and the like button if you haven't already. And feel free to ask me a question in the comments below. And definitely let me know if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to cover in future videos. I'm going to try to get to as much as possible coming up here while I'm not touring. And so I would love to know your feedback on whatever concepts you'd like me to dive into here on the YouTube channel. Alright guys, happy chatting. I'll see you next time.